You're listening to the Friends Talking Nerdy Podcast Network.
Friends Talking Nerdy!
I saw this trick where if you put your straw in the armpit, it makes this sound.
If your friends are nerdy and you are nerdy too, I want to talk to you. Friends Talking Nerdy.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Friends Talking Nerdy. This is Tim Jousma, and joining me all the way in Portland, Maine, we have Her Holiness, the Reverend Tracy. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty swell, Tim. I am sans the Mr. Reverend again this week. He is out of town. And I am also sans my bageling job this week because they are out of town. They're actually road tripping to take their kids to college because it's that small business. And then what's super funny is I'm still don't have my car just in time for my birthday to have absolutely nothing. And then what's great is the cherry on top of that shit cake is that I got a notice on our doors saying that I'm also not going to have any running water for 8 hours on my birthday tomorrow. Because we're recording this on Monday this week. My birthday is tomorrow, August 16th. So I just thought that was hilarious when I got that notice on the door. I'm like, great. No car, no partner, and no running water. So we're starting birthday week off lonely and without water.
Oh, that reminds me of the first Mr. Hankey episode on South Park. At the end of the episode, after the credits run, they cut to South Park Public Access, and Jesus is sitting there with a birthday cake singing, "Happy birthday to me," and then the lights go out.
I thought about trying to do a bunch of silly, sad birthday posts. But I can't decide if that would actually be funny or if people would just think that I'm just playing some poor, pitiful me things. I'm honestly fine with it. Just throwing it out there. The Reverend does not really giveth a shitteth about your birthday. It's just another day to me. So it's okay that I'm actually probably going to take myself out for breakfast. I'm going back to a super stricter vegan diet, but I think I'm going to go to Becky's Diner just one time for my birthday tomorrow morning, and I'm going to have breakfast by myself, and I'm going to read a book, and that's actually okay and a healthy thing to do.
Well, remember, though, if you do decide to make some sad post, remember what George Carlin said. The joke is in the exaggeration. So if you just make it really, really ridiculous about how sad you are, then maybe people will get that as a joke.
You know what? I saw somebody selling, no joke. Well, it is a joke, but the whole, when somebody's complaining, you, rub your fingers together and you say, you know what that is? This is the world's tiniest violin playing the world's saddest song for you right now. And what's great is there's this metaphysical shop right across from my office job that literally somebody made the tiny violins. So I almost want to get myself a tiny violin for my birthday. But that would be a way to do it, as I think is playing a really just dramatically that sad violin song that I feel like plays in the background of cartoons and crap since we were a kid, right? Yeah. So if I did anything, I think that would be how to sell it. But anywho, if I do any sad birthday post that you guys saw this week, please understand that I am fine. I am actually totally great with being on my own on my birthday. It doesn't really matter to me. I don't like big awkward parties anyway. It's just not been my bag.
And this is the part of the documentary where it's 12 hours later and then it's your birthday and you're crying with eating ice cream or something.
Oh, I do have a little thing of non-dairy Netflix and chill by Ben and Jerry's. So maybe I could do that and just my sad birthday day and just all the sad violin stuff and do all of the stereotypical I'm alone things. I don't know. It might be awkward to pretend like I'm crying at breakfast, though. But, I'd do it. I don't really mind what strangers think about me, I guess.
Well, also, maybe somebody would end up buying your food for you if you were crying too much. So there's a benefit there.
I can't make myself cry, though. It's just not something. It's not a talent that I have. It has been something I was accused of. At least once in the past, I was like, oh, God, I wish I could figure out how to make myself cry. I'd actually for real go into acting. That's really a desirable trait. It's hard to do. But anywho, so it's my birthday week. So I guess that's where I accidentally just inject that it is my birthday, you know.
You can send gift cards and money too.
Actually, all joking aside, if you are on our Facebook group and you know my profile and can go, I do have a public fundraiser. I do it every year. I pick something for suicide awareness. So I do ask that people please donate to that. I legit just, it goes back to, I can't emphasize how much that I just don't really care about my birthday. I haven't in decades. I would much rather people give something to a good cause than buy me stuff that I don't want/need. I mean, of course, like heartfelt gifts are totally different. You know what I mean? But I'm not a material person. I think I've mentioned on the show, I'm more of a minimalist. So I don't really want a big party where people try to guess things that I may or may not like and give me a bunch of stuff that I then would feel like guilty for getting rid of because somebody got me that thing. So for me, it literally makes my minimalism more difficult to have like birthday parties. Like that's why we didn't really do I didn't do a wedding shower or whatever, or a big wedding. Like I didn't want gifts. I told people, please don't send us gifts for our wedding. And like the whole baby shower thing is something that I again, just people get all of these gifts. And I just put myself mentally in that situation and being like, I'm not sure I would want that much stuff.
Yeah, you're like, hey, Tracy, why do you have 12 air fryers? Shut up. They were gifts.
Right? And then me being more of that human that I will keep something because I'm attached to the person that gave it to me. It just puts me in this weird, awkward position to just have a bunch of stuff that I'll never be able to get rid of. But how's your week going?
Well, my week, I've been having some more fun on TikTok, and it is weird, the videos that seem to get attention, because at least for me, the ones I've made, the ones that get the most attention all relate to food. Like, but one of the top most viewed videos that I've made on TikTok was just me reacting to somebody that was making a spaghetti meatloaf. And it was like they made spaghetti, they put in like some mozzarella sticks into there, they put it in the freezer, then they made it all out. And I'm like, why are over 4,000 people watching me comment on this? But I'll take it. I mean, so it's been an interesting week, I guess, kind of learning what TikTok is all about, you know?
Right. I think that's funny because I still just have the 2 videos right now. I'm still trying to play with how to do stuff. And the one that I did responding to, Miss Stay Toxic, that one's got about, I think, over 1,100 views now. And then the second one I did has like some views, but I did love that the guy that, I did the duet on his video. He's awesome, by the way. I went and followed him because his videos are really great. He apparently is very open about his recovering from addiction story. So that is something that I love supporting, are people who are open about their journey, about their struggle. It really just kind of normalizes the conversation that this isn't that rare, and maybe being okay with being open and talking about it, like lets people know that it's not that rare so that you can then like start addressing your issues. So I've always loved like people who have that theme to their account. But he actually liked my video back. So I was worried because I really loved his message. I didn't want him to think that I was like discarding it or trying to cheapen it or anything with my stupid joke in the end. But he seemed to appreciate it. So TikTok is making me actually kind of want to learn it more. It seems a little bit better than I initially assumed. I felt like I kind of got my little, the whippersnappers are on this now attitude, and I had no interest in learning it at first. But with getting rid of Twitter, it kind of made more sense to be open to looking at it. And then seeing the stuff that you were doing with it was also kind of cool. So it kind of drew me in slowly.
Kind of? Come on. No. I'm making quality content here.
Well, I was going to say kind of drew me in. I was like, I've made 2 videos. I can't say that I've totally, like, completely gotten hooked on TikTok where I'm doing it every day.
Well, so far what I'm really digging about it is that personal aspect, because the thing that's lacking in other social media sites is body language, tone of voice. I mean, how many times have people made a joke on Twitter that people just didn't get because it's words typed out on a screen?
Oh, exactly. And even if you're typing words on the screen, what I like is you're doing a video of like, you can do that with your face so that you can see, because that's actually kind of a cool style. I like that, like of just you having kind of a nonverbal like body language and kind of pointing up at words or, pointing at things around you as they pop up. Like I saw that on Instagram. And so now I'm realizing that I think people were making those on their TikTok. And because TikTok can share to Instagram. So all of the neat videos that I've really appreciated from some of the people that I follow on Instagram, like appeared to be coming from there. So it's been fun.
Well, I know there's one video that I have seen on TikTok that we wanted to talk about before we dive into our main event this week. And that involves the daughter of a former president of the United States.
Oh, yes. Back from where I come from in Texas, because, the Bushes are very well known for being Texas family and Texas royalty. But yeah, there was this headline that came up, and I had seen it on The Independent originally, but The Independent released, and other people did too. Justin Sylvester pushes Jenna Bush Hager away twice during today's show segment. And so it was actually the Mr. Reverend that showed this to me. And I remember I watched the video. I don't always read the articles on stuff, especially when it's an article. It's like people are demanding the head of, and that's kind of what this one was going towards. It was saying some viewers suggest Hager should be suspended for repeatedly violating Sylvester's personal space. And if you watch the video, it very much seems like that's exactly what she's doing. She even kind of makes a comment at the beginning where she says, like the chef says something about Justin being good at something, and Jenna says something that's not all he's good at, with all of the dripping of uncomfortable sexual tone that you want to take into it, I suppose. And then, you see her touch his shoulder and he shrugs her off. Like you can clearly see that he shrugged her off. And then he did put his hand like to her, kind of to her stomach, but like the back of his hand, more of like a pushing away gesture. And she kind of kept pursuing and touching him. And so I understand why people would respond to that negatively. Now, it does turn out in full clarity that Justin has now come out. And what's funny is, of course, the article I found was released on today.com, where Justin Sylvester is explaining what really went on in the viral video of him pushing Jenna away. And essentially, it seems like that he's kind of taking her side on it, that, he was trying to flirt with the chef, and he is saying that he was trying to create some space. What I found was interesting is he didn't cop it off that he was trying to be playful or anything like that, which I think would kind of make it a little bit more understandable in my head. But I think the real takeaway from all of this is this is not acceptable behavior to put on national television. Whether it was joking or acceptable or not, what everybody saw that we're trying to say is okay was some person making a comment, touching that person even though they kind of shrugged off and moved away, and then continually pursuing touching that person. And to me, kind of, trying to come out and say that it's okay after the fact doesn't really make it okay. Like, I think I still kind of stand on, she could use to maybe be suspended and talked to about the example that you're setting on national television, right? We wouldn't want a male host doing that to a female co-host. It seems super clear, right, that would be considered really gross behavior.
The male host would have been fired, before that segment was done. I mean, that is just a fact. Look how, and rightfully so, if that were the case.
Yeah, and again, this goes towards, it doesn't really matter. It more matters what it looks like, right? Because you're setting that visual example when you're on TV of how to treat other people. So what she kind of did was kind of give this not so great example. I do think that today's show should definitely address what happened. I mean, I don't know how I feel about an article coming out. You can totally speculate that this stinks of like women backpedaling after they realize they've just like said something about somebody who's way bigger than them, right? Or something being witnessed that they would have never turned in because they don't want to kind of question that hierarchy. And I'm not saying that that's what happened. I'm just saying it kind of could be interpreted that way too. That, Justin Sylvester, who is he compared to Jenna Bush Hager? So I could see that kind of trying to protect that protection of self coming in and trying to defend the action. Again, Not saying that's what happened. He said that she's a very nice, kind lady, and she very well could just be physically affectionate. But I think it's still time to question that in the age of consent culture, that just because you're physically affectionate does not give you permission to continue to touch people. It's like, learn to read cues. She shouldn't have gone back again, even if it was playful, right? Like if she had just stopped the first time she put her hand on his shoulder, I don't think we would be talking about this right now. But really the thing was showing that pursuit on national television that I think people are really having a problem with accepting.
Understandable too, because contrary to what people think, I mean, that is the one time where you have both parents and kids at home watching this. And
Exactly.
I remember as a kid myself, I did pay attention to what was on the news when my mother had it on. So it's very much possible that, some kids saw this and, I'm not going to say that, 20, 30 years from now, we're going to find out that a rash of kids were somehow horribly affected by this. I'm not saying that, but it's still a bad example. It's something that does need to be addressed because, again, if the genders were reversed here, it would be much, much more of an uproar than it currently is.
Right. I think there would still be the conversation of this is not a good example. And I think that's why I still wanted to bring it up. I know we had talked at the head like before we got on the recording that I wasn't sure, especially with his article, but really it just kind of makes me feel like it's more worth talking about now. I don't want to give what was witnessed an entire pass. I do think it still deserves to be addressed because there is kind of a really gnarly attitude that a certain segment of vaginaed people seem to have where, we, because I'm still in that group, we got treated a certain way for several decades by men. So it is okay to treat them that way back. And last I checked, that's not actually how you fix this stuff. Fixing it actually requires addressing it and everybody involved being able to move on from it, not doing it back and forth to each other. Right. And it's funny because I know our topic is going to be talking about dating. And I feel like that's something that can happen in relationships. So not necessarily during the dating part of it. But when you're in a long-term relationship, that kind of idea of, well, they did it to me, so I'm going to do it back. And that's toxic at any level, I guess, is what I'm saying. So it just seems like women kind of have this thing right now. And I say this based on, some of the weird stuff that I see on Facebook sometimes where it's like they'll post a picture of like this dude that's really hot and just make all of this thirsty commentary over it. And I'm like, isn't it kind of weird that we're giving ourselves permission to do this when this is something that we're asking men to stop doing to us? And almost every time I will have at least one or more female person give that idea of, well, they've done it to us for a long time, so it serves them right. And I'm like, that's not a healthy attitude.
Two wrongs don't make a right. I mean, that's old adage, but it's true.
Yeah. And even, the whole eye for an eye thing is Old Testament, folks. That actually got, if you're a Christian person, that's still not cool. Like Jesus addressed that. Like, don't do that.
Yeah, it's not a motto to live by in your marriage. Trust me on that one.
No.
But kind of let's slide into our main event with that because you are correct. In a lot of ways, it does have kind of some similarities in some ways. And as you mentioned, we're going to be talking about dating today. And it's all because of a Psychology Today article I came across. And, thanks to TikTok of all places, it a lot of people had made some videos on TikTok about it. I also saw some posts on Facebook previously about it. But the article was called The Rise of Lonely Single Men by Dr. Greg Matos.
Yes. And I'll be clear with everybody. I did not read this one. So this is more of a Tim, take it away. Tell us about this Psychology Today article. I'm a big fan of Psychology Today.
Yeah, well, when I first read it, I ended up getting annoyed. And I wanted to question myself as to why, because the article itself, as it's talking about men, it's talking about dating and relationships. I wanted to make sure that my response wasn't the not all guys type of response that you normally get in a situation like this. And the more I thought about it, what I decided to do was kind of go through the article and get some bullet points together that I think really kind of illustrate why I think I was upset.
Right.
The like one bullet point here is that men are quickly becoming long-term single. Men are typically happier and healthier when they're partnered. So this is a long-term problem for physical and mental health of men. And one reason for that is lack of success on dating apps.
That kind of makes sense, though, because I know we've also talked about, women have kind of moved away from dating apps. So, and I think this article does cover that, right?
Indeed. Yeah. It mentions in the article that on average, among all of the dating apps, 62% of the users are men. There was another article I came across for Tinder specifically that talked about that Tinder had 78% of its users were men. And when you think about that is a way to kind of illustrate a lot of the problem here, because you were going to say something.
Oh no, it's okay. When I put a finger up, you totally don't have to stop. It's just that I had something to interject after the fact. Like, really, it's also interesting because that's not an accurate reflection of our gender ratios in the United States. There are more women than men in the United States. Just in case people didn't know that, it's not by much. It's like 51.1% or something like that. But so that's interesting to take into the context of that information is all. Like, I didn't mean to interrupt your thought there. I'm sorry.
No worries. Basically, an analogy I thought of here is that women are kind of like scouts for a national sports team. They have a roster spot that they need to fill, and they have 10 people that apply for that. 8 of them are confirmed world-class athletes. 2 of them are minor league players. Are you really going to really find fault with a scout of a team to go for a world-class player compared to someone that could potentially become one but is a fixer-upper? It's when it's a 2-to-1 average like this, you can understand why women would be a little more selective because they're getting so many matches. Like, before you met the Mr. Reverend, you used dating apps. How many matches did you end up getting?
Oh my God. Meeting the Mr. Reverend was kind of funny. So, Tim and I have mentioned that he and I dated at one point, and Tim and I actually met through Tinder. And so obviously I don't regret everybody that I met through Tinder. But and Mr. Reverend was funny to me because I had gotten so frustrated with the whole thing. And that includes dating bad poly. Like, I'm sorry for anybody out there that does this, but if you are a polyamorous person and you are already with a nesting partner, it is really important to bring that up maybe before somebody goes on a date with you, like especially if it's supposed to be a romantic date. I shouldn't have learned that on the date that they had a nesting partner, especially because my preferred style is a little bit more of a kitchen table poly situation. Like, so it kind of felt weird. And like it kind of immediately undercut my trust. I also had the really funny date that I went on just to see how bad it was, of the guy who like really just was like wanted me to commit to being willing to have sex with him, like before we even met for drinks. And I went just to see how bad that was. And what I mean by that was he literally sat there and like almost hate watched a game the entire time while drinking. And not that I necessarily believe that people should just buy me drinks, but I thought it was interesting with his mentality being his main focus was to bed me, that he didn't buy or offer to buy a single one of my drinks. Didn't even offer to like get up and get me a drink, which granted I wouldn't have let him anyway because I would have suspected like Roofie City. I mean, not really, but I just would have, statistically, you should kind of reduce that. And if somebody's being very predatory, I would not let them get me drinks. That's just a rule that I made up at some point in college. If somebody seems super, super into me, I'll just go get my own drink from the bar. I did get ghosted by one guy that I really was into. And then what was funny was a handful of months later, I saw him sitting on a bench with a wedding ring. We had actually met at a hotel and been romantic. So I was like, oh, okay. I think that just happened. So that being said, I'd actually gotten to just the end of my patience with Tinder. I had never really used a dating app. I had almost always kind of known friends or been in a friend group where it turned out someone was interested in me. Like, not necessarily that they were waiting for me to be single, but it just kind of worked out that way. where like, oh, okay, well, we were friends. So what's funny is it made a really interesting base for the relationship because I was with somebody already. So we were genuinely getting to know each other as friends. So getting into Tinder, got tired of it. I legit only found the Mr. Reverend from just, I wanted to see the end of Tinder one day. So I just wanted to run out of potential matches. And in Portland, Oregon, there were so many potential matches. And it kind of goes into that statistic you were saying. You know, at the time I had really just put that I was more interested in men, even though I am interested in both. I even think that I put that I was interested in both. But there were a lot more men on there. I didn't see a lot of women. So kind of to that point of frustration. So I, swiped yes on him, and I decided to be nice because I had swiped yes, that I should keep the app for about a week and let anybody who wants to talk to me, right? Because I didn't want to do bullshit behavior. And so I feel like I kind of lucked out in an anomaly way to get with the Mr. Reverend. But yeah, it was kind of a weird journey. And when I realized I was really getting more shitty situations than good, it made it a really easy decision for me, a woman, I'm going to throw that up in quotes, to just remove that. Like, it just made it such an easy decision to be like, nope, I don't want to do Tinder. I don't want to do Bumble. I don't want to do any of the dating apps anymore. So I completely understand why women have kind of more or less fled from the dating app route as far as if they want something serious. Now, a lot of women still do use it like for sexual hookups. And I think it's a totally acceptable way to do that if that's what you want to do. So it's just turned into more, I don't think dating apps are for dating. I think they're really more for hookups now.
Yeah, and that was ultimately what I discovered really kind of annoyed me about the article, because the article was crafted in a way to make it seem like men are the problem, and when what's really the case here is that in terms of this article specifically, this article was framing the lonely single men in terms of dating apps only. I'm not referring to anything else. I mean, when you have a case to where almost it's almost a 2-to-1 ratio of men versus women on there, like, your chances of, as a guy, of finding success on there are just not going to be good, and it begs the question, instead of trying to urge guys to become better at defeating the algorithms for the dating app, why are we not encouraging them to actually go where women are? Because they're not on dating apps.
Right. I mean, especially men, and I know several men who don't want to just fuck around. They do want a good, solidly built relationship. And I find like the advice I give when I ask if they want advice, because we're going to go into this whole consent culture thing. I think that's going to be almost a theme to this whole thing. As I've learned, right? Ask for consent before you just give advice to people. Not everybody wants advice. Some people just want to vent. But when I do end up giving advice to like my single friends who are frustrated, particularly men, my male friends, it's really like, invest in your hobbies. Get out there and do things that you enjoy, because what's great is that's going to set you up to meet people who are already into something you enjoy. So possibly you already have a quality time activity together. And so it can kind of help with that. And even like inherently solo activities like hiking, there's like meetup groups. Like, I think I'd made the joke to you that I feel like more successful relationships have spurred from meetup.com than from Tinder.
And that is something we're thinking about. I mean, I know with my experience with dating apps after my divorce occurred in 2016, the dating app, like I guess Tinder was created in 2014. So, that's only a couple years later. They didn't have that many users. And for someone who has anxiety issues like myself, at first, dating apps were so great to be able to break the ice and connect with people. But yeah, over time, I think what I have found the negative, that is a negative for me for dating apps, and why I think I'm probably, not going to use them again, is because it does, to your point, it kind of makes you forget the fact that you do have to, if you're trying to create a long-term relationship, you have to create it based on something other than just, the chemicals that are going on in your head, because those do go away. And if you don't have any other basis together, that's just going to lead to problems down the road.
Exactly. And I think we do have like an article that we'll get into that I think does a good job at kind of addressing kind of what happened to our apps and like in those apps and where they kind of took a turn.
Well, let's dive into the article right now.
Oh, awesome. Yeah. So in talking about this, of course, I wanted to go out there and find like more, right? I love finding a good source of material. And I did end up finding just that through the Center for Modern Relationships. It's called Ditch Toxic Dating Culture. It's an article by Michelle Herzog, LMFT CST, and just a little bit of a quick side education on what those things mean. That means she is a licensed marriage and family therapist as well as a certified sex therapist. So that immediately got my attention. And in true the Reverend fashion, this article that I found phrases it better than I would. So it's a little bit of a read through to follow along with. So yeah, let's go with it. There's 5 total. Number 1, dating by, quote, the rules.
Ooh.
Living by a set of dating rules that TDC, which is the little abbreviation for toxic dating culture, that TDC supports is a recipe for letdown and confusion and frustration. These rules were created to play on people's attachment traumas, which is not helpful for someone who is trying to cultivate meaningful connection. If you find yourself counting the hours between responding to a text or tallying the number of dates you've been on with someone before having sex with them, I invite you to move in a different direction. If you ditch these rules and so many others, you are actually giving yourself a chance to create authentic and engaging dating experiences on your terms, and you deserve to have a dating life that you're excited about.
It makes a lot of sense because, like, take texting alone. I mean, that for me, on the very early stages of meeting with somebody, you don't want to seem like you're overeager. And I mean, I remember doing that once, and I'm sure I probably did it more than once, but one comes to mind. And just the feeling of like, oh shit, I stepped in it once it's pointed out to you that you're a little eager. Just, it's like, you want to be respectful. You don't want to overwhelm somebody's text messages, but in the whole scheme of things, you got the chemicals going in your brain. You want to have, oh my God, this person, I liked him, and you want to text them, but the rules, and
yeah,
that's. I mean, yeah, you again, being overeager, you do want to respect somebody, sending like 25 text messages at 3:00 in the morning. Maybe don't do that, but
yeah,
you could
that only works if you're both experiencing the same level of NRE. So what stinks is like a lot of these rules, end quote, actually goes against a lot of what our chemicals tell us to do. So, and I think like really the dating by the rules thing, and we're going to get into some of those rules like after this article, because we did find one that had just like a whole list of them that were just fascinating to go through. But it's exhausting, right? When something has continual rules that always changes, think about playing any game. Or like playing a game when you were a kid, right? And somebody made up some game. And every time you do something, there's a new rule introduced. It gets frustrating and it makes you not want to play the game anymore, right? So I think that's honestly what's gone on with dating. And now because we've had kind of decades of toxic dating culture to contribute to all of these rules. And what's amazing is a lot of them have not gone away. Like some of the stuff we'll talk about, we're more or less going to do a little bit of a nerdy 5 of our least favorite toxic dating culture behaviors. Like they've been around since Tim and I were kids. Like I remember kind of being more or less passively educated on these things. But yeah, it's so continual and ongoing. It's exhausting. And I totally get where people just are like, I'm done dating.
It can definitely get totally frustrating, especially if, you're on the guy end of dating app life,
Mm-hmm. And then number 2, losing personal accountability. This is what I was kind of talking about a second ago. Modern dating technology has made it really easy to abandon our values. If you're reading this, you've most likely been on the receiving end of having a lively conversation with someone in an app that abruptly stops, never to be heard from again. Or you've been ghosted by someone you've been seeing for a couple of months. Or you send message after message hoping for a response, but instead you get crickets. Digital dating has created a culture in which we are not being accountable to ourselves or to the people we come in contact with. The lack of personal accountability in modern dating is straight up harmful, like really harmful. If you are going to be an ethical dater, then you need to take it upon yourself to develop accountability around how you treat other people. It has to start with you. Take a moment to write down the ways you are going to show personal accountability in your dating life and start to implement those actions ASAP. Oh, yeah. I mean, that even goes to me talking at the top of the show about being ghosted by that guy. Being treated like a piece of meat, like the guy that I went on the date just to see how bad it was. And that being said, yes, I did go on dates where it was just we talked and it just, it didn't click. But that was like maybe one out of all of them where we actually had that refreshing, emotional, intelligent moment where we legit said, like, we're not attracted to each other. Like it came up very organically and it was super refreshing, but that's the only time I've ever experienced that. And we stayed and enjoyed our drinks. Like once we cut the tension of realizing we weren't into each other, we had a nice chat and that was it. We never talked again. And that's okay. But we talked about that, had a nice time, went our separate ways. No different than having a fun friend in the line at the grocery store that you just never intend to see again. It was totally a refreshing experience, but seems to be incredibly rare experience in dating.
And it kind of goes to what we were talking about before the recording, too, in terms of these weird expectations you have with online dating. I mean, when you do match with somebody and meet them for the first time, you met them on a dating app. So you're not necessarily thinking, I'm going to start and, get to know them as a person first. It's automatically from the start, like, I could potentially have sex with this person. Yay!
Yay!
and you're not thinking about other things that I guess I think you probably would think about if you met this person in real life, whether at like a volunteer thing or at a record store or wherever people meet people today,
Exactly. Like, I think in a weird way, online dating seemed like a really cool idea, right? Like there was a book that I had read, Say What You Will of Steve Harvey. I still think Act Like a Lady, Think Like a Man was an interesting read. At one point in my dating journey and figuring out how to date. But something that he had put out there was not settling for somebody who treats you poorly, because this book was to women, right? And women do kind of have that historical stereotype of the whole it's not that bad, right? And he had this whole thing of, we do have the internet. We have more access to meet people who are into you. It doesn't matter if you've got a gap between your teeth, if you're skinny, if you're fat, if you're tall, if you're short, you can find people. And that is kind of neat about internet dating. But I think my humble opinion on it is what it's accidentally done is it's made it like you're interacting with personas or possibly characters instead of realizing that you're interacting with a real life person. Like we've just come off of video game era, right? And now we are interacting with people who aren't face-to-face people with us. And I'm not going to say that we're like necessarily justifying treating them like how some people treat hookers in Grand Theft Auto, but it really kind of takes away that you're dealing with a human when you don't have like that face-to-face interaction. So I can see where it's easier to kind of have this separation that you're dealing with a living, breathing human who has emotions and needs versus like if you had met them like in a class in your college, or if you guys had ended up on like a hiking group together and slowly making chat over time, where you're more likely to view that person as a human you're meeting than a potential, getting your metaphorical dick wet situation. You know what I mean? Like it's less objectifying, I think. I see where it's easier to objectify, I guess, is the more succinct way to do that when you don't meet them face to face in that way.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, what is the third one?
Number 3 is actually kind of related to that. Assigning trendy names to shitty behavior. Ghosting, breadcrumbing, orbiting, fleabagging, zombieing, catfishing. Should I keep going? Benching, love bombing, cookie jarring, outsourcing. People are clever, but what would happen if you stopped wasting your time naming these bad behaviors and spent more time being an ethical dater? I have a feeling your experience would be more positive. Would it surprise you to learn that people have been behaving this way in dating scenarios well before the convenience of digital dating? The only difference is that our access has increased, providing more opportunities to come up against these kinds of dating, quote, trends. The invention of the meme hasn't helped either. This is your opportunity to identify dating trends that you are contributing to in toxic dating culture and to replace them with ethical actions based on positive dating experience you want for yourself. You can do this. So kind of related, right? Because it's talking about how, like, number 2 kind of brought up that we do kind of this stuff, like the whole ghosting thing. I don't know what benching is. Catfishing I'm aware of, but I kind of remember being catfished before catfishing was considered a thing on Plenty of Fish, for anybody who actually knows what that dating website was.
I think benching, if it's the same thing as a sports reference, if you bench a player, you're putting somebody else in, but, have a chance to bring them back into the game at a later point.
Okay.
Which, on both ends, whether you're a guy or a gal, if you were the one being benched, not the best feeling.
Right. I mean, I would almost keep that more as like, I think I'd heard that as stringing along. But I guess you don't have to string along. Doesn't necessarily mean you're seeing somebody else. So I guess I could see where benching is a little bit different. But I just didn't know what half the terms were, and I found that refreshing that I didn't know what half the terms were.
Well, me, it'd be like, I don't know what the kids know today, but with the names too, what I've found is, in terms of like ghosting, breadcrumbing, stuff like that, the people that are normally throwing that out aren't necessarily looking at how their own behavior contributed to that situation. I mean, speaking for myself, I know I've been in situations to where, I've said that the person I used to be in a relationship with has caused me all kinds of pain and sorrow, without taking into account my actions in that process, and a lot of times when you do have people that are throwing this out, sometimes, thou doth protest too much type of deal, it's like the people that are the complaining about that the most, 9 times out of 10 are the ones that are doing it themselves,
Oh, yeah. So, I mean, and I guess I get it. Like, I don't think we should continue making cute names for people to brag about what they do, right? Mm-hmm. Like, making trendy names for shit behavior is kind of, in a weird way, branding that behavior is cool. And I did like the mention of bringing up memes, right? Because I think I've talked about it on here before. Anybody can make a meme. It's almost like this weird form of gaslighting, because making it into like a very well put together shareable is kind of like presenting something as fact. It kind of almost plays with that same part of the brain as stating something very factual, right? Mm-hmm. So yeah, people are like making these terms, making them funny, making them cute, and maybe that's just not the thing we should be focusing on.
Yeah, I mean, it's the main focus, I guess, should be what is making a relationship work. If there is something that needs to be worked on, properly communicating that with the other person instead of looking for an excuse to ditch them and then throwing out a catchphrase to, get people to say, oh, poor you,
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of weird, though, because I do kind of get the sense that making the names like makes you aware of the potential shitty information or shitty behaviors that are out there. But at the same time, it is kind of accidentally branding it and making it desirable for people to pursue. Like, it almost gives that bad idea, especially of jaded people who are in the dating scene, which does exist. There are women that will tear through men like tissue paper. There are men that tear through women like tissue paper. Both genders do that. And I think what the opposite of the creating awareness around it is accidentally encouraging people to do shitty behavior because they feel validated because, they got wronged by somebody at some point. So fuck all of insert gender.
Yeah, because that's always healthy.
That's super the place you want to be in when you're dating, right? Like that's what you should be in, like putting on to other people.
Love me. I dare you,
I dare you to love me. I'll be terrible to you. So number 4, using dating apps to meet your sexual needs while not being upfront about it, which is something we organically touched on kind of at the beginning. I am the last person to shame you for having casual sex. Please get your sexual needs met, but do be upfront about it. In order to ditch toxic dating culture, you must take responsibility for your actions, including your intentions around sex. When you use a dating app to meet your sexual needs and do not outwardly express your intention, you are setting another person up for a whole lot of emotional distress. Plus, you aren't giving that person the opportunity to make a healthy decision for themselves. Your actions have impact. It's sexy to be upfront about what you're looking for out of dating apps. If you own your sexual needs and can express them appropriately, you will find yourself in the sheets with people who are also craving casual connections. But if you are lying to get what you want, then you, my friend, are playing right into toxic dating culture. I encourage you to think deeply about your ethical dating practices and how you can effectively communicate your intentions. And I think this is almost like one of the things I really appreciated about, polyamory and that community is that openness of what you want, right? Like there's solo poly people out there who know they do not want to live with another human. Mm-hmm. And they know they don't want to have kids. You know what I mean? And so like that person though going on a date with somebody, who's really looking for that nesting partner first, but they're not communicating that's, but they're more likely to at least communicate their needs, I guess is what I'm saying. And it's something that I wish that emotional maturity around sexual wants and needs versus relationship wants and needs, I wish that would bleed over to monogamous dating. Because, right, there are lots of people out there who just want to have casual sex. And wouldn't it be great if they were just honest enough to say that that's what they wanted? So those people are getting matched together and leaving the people alone who are looking for a nesting partner.
I know for me, when I was younger, I was nervous to talk to the ladies and whatnot about stuff like that, only to find out later on that, yeah, if you just ask, you'd be surprised the answers you would get from women about, all the dirty casual stuff you'd want to do. But it's just being honest, being appropriate too, obviously, not bringing it up to just somebody like you work with that you've never had a conversation like that before. It's just someone that you meet like that. But again, talk it out. Because there are plenty of people, especially in Portland, Oregon. I mean, this is a hard town not to get laid in, but you just have to be able to communicate that, Yeah,
and be fair about it. Like, there's nothing wrong or shameful with wanting to have casual sex. The wrong and kind of shameful thing is when you do emotional damage to other people, not caring if your needs mesh. Right. And that can even be said of people who still choose to go into long-term relationships who have maybe like lied about what they like to do or what they're into or how they want to spend their life. Like it would be the equivalent, I think, of like even one person saying, I do want to have kids. I do want to move in. And the other person just going along with it, even though they know damn well they don't want to have kids. Mm-hmm. Right. So it's the same thing. I just wish we could see that level of honesty open up about that instead of this weird tabooed sexual shame we have around it. Because again, there's nothing wrong with that. Even if that's not something that I necessarily want, I just don't think it's really my place to say you're a bad person for wanting casual sex, because I just don't see a problem with it as long as you're being honest about what you're going for.
Honest and respectful too. Again, but
maybe you don't randomly roll up behind somebody in a grocery store line. It's like, excuse me, would you like to have sexual intercourse later? Like, you learn like the appropriate places to bring it up.
Yeah, I mean, last time no.
It's like last time I did that, it was horrible. Security got called.
Pepper spray and everything. What is number 5?
The 5th and final one that I wanted to share, and that's all there is to this. There's actually not more, so there's only 5. Number 5. There will always be someone better mindset. It's time to take a good look at the potential partners that are actually in front of you and stop telling yourself that there could be somebody better out there. Toxic dating culture has created the idea that you have endless options. You don't. Toxic dating culture has made us feel like we deserve to have our list of 134 qualities in a partner checked before we commit. your list is way too long. Toxic dating culture is literally driving people to believe that the absolute perfect person is out there. Spoiler alert, perfect people do not exist. This mindset is hurting your dating life, and it's setting you up for constant disappointment. Take the opportunity to check your expectations so you can really give potential partners the time it actually takes to see if chemistry is there. If you put in the time and effort and you feel like it's best to move on to other options, that's great. You've made a positive change. So yeah, like like kind of to the thing that I'd brought up with Steve Harvey's book. Like what he was talking about is if you are in a relationship where you are being treated poorly, there's not a reason to stay in that. Like there's enough options out there that you can realistically find somebody who doesn't treat you like shit or objectify you or insert thing that's undesirable and making you miserable. But what this is saying is maybe don't just dust your hands the first fight you've had, because you're really robbing yourself of emotional maturity there. Like something that did come up in the 21 most toxic stuff that didn't quite make my list, but you kind of touched on it earlier, is this idea that when you have a fight with a partner, we place it off on that person's toxic. And you're not taking any of that time to do one of the Reverend's favorite things, shadow work and shadow integration, to unpack if you had anything to do with that. Mm-hmm. Like you're robbing yourself from that to constantly just keep churning through the dating scene because you don't want to do the hard work that it honestly takes to maintain a healthy relationship.
And you're not keeping a scorecard here. And I think this is part of the problem too about, the people that you do meet via a dating app, starting off with romance automatically. You're not creating that human to human connection that it really is important for a relationship, and to be fair, there are people that, in your case, for example, that have met through a dating app and make a relationship work.
Yes.
But from the sounds of the article I read, a lot of guys are not able to do that, so it's like, I think the important thing is, speaking for myself only here, just identifying the fact that maybe me with my personality, maybe I'm not best to sell myself on a dating app. And maybe it's not healthy for me either because of the weird expectations that are there when you meet up with someone on a dating app. Doesn't mean I don't want a romantic relationship. Not at all. I would certainly love one or whatever, but just... It has to be done right, and through a dating app is not the right way.
Yeah, relationships are hard, and everybody's going to have their different communication needs. Like for the Mr. Reverend and I, something silly that we came up with that has seriously reduced fighting. We have both realized that we are bad at interrupting each other. We're bad about it. So now what we do is when we have one of those intrusive, I need to speak right now thoughts. And if you've ever noticed me do this, I don't think I've ever explained it to you, Tim, is we put our finger on our nose. Because it just means I have a thought, I'm hanging on to it, I want you to finish your thought. But I have a thought. So that way that person can wrap up, because what we were finding was we'd have a thought and we'd try to hang on to it, but somebody, like they're talking and they're filling the space and they don't know that there's some other thought that wants to be contributed. So like if I see the Mr. Reverend put his finger on his nose, I know, oh, let me wrap this up because he has a thought he'd really like to share and doesn't want to interrupt me. And that has been such an amazing tool, because interrupting is really one of those things that we do as people. Like it is also one of the top pet peeves, but that also goes into you tend to notice things that you do. That's that whole theory of projection. We're all bad at it. So something really interesting real quick about number 5. I loved that it brought up this whole toxic dating culture has made us feel like we deserve to have our list of hundreds of qualities. I feel like that straight comes from Christianity soulmate belief. I remember getting shot down once by this guy that I liked back when it was in high school and I was going to this church. And he told me that it was because God told him that his soulmate would have green eyes. So I legit got shot down because he felt that God gave him his list. And that's actually, from my experience, a very common mentality. And again, people who don't know my full background that haven't listened to a lot of this episode, I come from the Bible belt buckle down in Texas. So that's why it's super prevalent for me to talk about some of the Jesus stuff sometimes. But yeah, like when I read that, I was like, holy shit, that was so like relevant when I was a kid. And I remember like people making their soulmate lists. Like that was a thing that I remember. Like, and what's sad is it's almost a toxic overdone of something that could be quite healthy, right? Because something that I'd learned is you should have your prices of admission. You should know what you want. That was actually a thing from Polyamory Weekly from the Cunning Minx, is she talks about having an owner's manual for yourself and having an honest conversation of what you want and need in a relationship and not settling on those things, which is kind of important versus having it shouldn't be 100 things though, right? Like that's way too much and just damn near unrealistic.
I think for me, when it comes to polyamory, it made me realize that relationships will always evolve. And you need to be able to accept that what your relationship is today, not what you want it to be 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the road. And, you know, that again is a mindset that you have to really train yourself to be in dating, to be able to accept the fact that, you know, I may be excited now. My level of excitement may remain the same. It may not remain that way for the other person at some point. And you have to be able to deal with that, you know, because think of how silly a soulmate, out of all the billions of people on the planet, someone within relative close geographical distance to you is just for you. Imagine that. Ooh.
But the wrap up really quick on this article, because her final little paragraph here, excuse me. We've all contributed to toxic dating culture in some way, but I am confident that you have the power to change toxic dating culture. This is your opportunity to craft the dating experience you have been yearning for. If you want a different experience, you must own the actions you have taken so far and do a serious inventory on how to make ethical changes in your dating life. And remember, you can't control other people. So even when you show up with the energy to kick TDC to the curb, you may come across daters who are not practicing the same values you are. Those people are not for you, and that is okay. Kind of goes into not taking it personally when you don't have compatibility, which is something that I think we've accidentally taught in our culture, is that if somebody decides they are not compatible with me in any way, that there's something wrong with me. And that doesn't really mean that. It's like saying that there's something wrong with the USB thing that won't fit in the USB-C port. There's nothing wrong with them. They just don't go together. Like they can still totally exist and not be bad things. You don't need to throw one in the trash. It just doesn't go together. And there's nothing wrong with that. Indeed.
And yeah, just if anything, I think too, I would say just be able to be honest with yourself as well. Own up to your mistakes that have led to a relationship going sideways, you know, because you are not an innocent victim.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, because there may be. We're not talking about abuse instances here. Right. We're talking just two people that just life happens and they drift apart. You know. Exactly.
Because I know sometimes with some things that I feel I've witnessed, and even in my past relationships, or even, you know, you get into relationships with other partners and you hear them talk about their past relationships. I think the biggest problem with a lot of them is they get really toxic and nobody addresses it. It goes back to that whole, well, they're toxic, it's their thing. And you're not necessarily doing that important shadow work, which is absolutely vital for a healthy long-term relationship, is to see where you honestly contributed. Again, it's not meant to victim blame there, because a lot of people will say, well, you're victim blaming. I'm like, well, not really. There's actually a really fine line between shadow integration work and self-blame. And I think, honestly, if you're being honest with yourself, you could feel that difference. One is a beat-up conversation. The other is, well, I sure did interrupt him in the middle of his thought, and I can see where that was really rude. So that probably put that in the mood, and then it just kind of escalated from there, because then we just started interrupting each other, right? Like, yeah. There's a difference between, you know, the two. And you can grow from it, and you can make a better relationship from it. But I think what happens is when people have that they are being toxic attitude and not having that honesty, especially when you have both people doing that, that relationship gets so toxic that you can actually end up in a situation where you are abusive to each other. And I'm not saying like that domestic violence level of abuse. I'm even saying the emotional abuse end of it, the way that you can just justify saying shitty things to each other, they did this to me, so I'm going to do it back. Like, those are kind of oddly abusive mentalities to have, in my opinion.
And they can creep up on you. I mean, because, I've made no secret that my marriage did not end well. And I know in my marriage, I certainly said things out of anger that, I wish I could go back in time and take back. But I got to live with the consequences of what I did, because ultimately I wasn't being honest with myself. I didn't have the courage to say to myself, this is not working. This cannot continue. There is no way to resolve this. It's time to go.
Right.
If I had been able to do that at a much earlier time, maybe I could have had a better relationship with the ex-wife. Maybe things could have been different. But, I took the path that I did. Now, I'm a human being. Everybody makes mistakes. You learn. That's a part of life. And, I would like to think I've gotten better, at this. But you're still going to make mistakes. You're human. Just the most important thing is just be honest with yourself about what you did to muck things up, because 9 times out of 10, basically too, if you have somebody that you used to date, another thing I found too is talk to them about the situation, because you're going to be less likely to do the whining, everybody hates me thing, because obviously if the person, is talking to you that you used to have a relationship with them, that's not the case.
Right.
So you're able to check yourself.
Yeah. And something that I found honestly refreshing about my first marriage, because that didn't work out, but it also just kind of got addressed quickly that it wasn't working out. And it didn't turn into this thing that we stayed together because, we're married. So we should make it stay together for at least X number of years. Right. And then I'm glad we didn't do that, because I think that probably would have been a recipe to be incredibly toxic. And as much as it doesn't thrill me that, my first marriage was kind of short, that is something I was thankful for, especially, learning about other people's marriages and how bad they can just get to this point where it's just really toxic. You're even indulging in bad behaviors together. And then it comes to a either like literally violent or figuratively violent end, right? Mm-hmm. And granted, the literally violent is a totally other conversation, but it even goes into the kind of the metaphorical or like the verbally violent, where you end up yelling at each other and saying horrible things. And, I just wish people could have that okayness with either you need to be able to talk and navigate and fix this relationship. You potentially need to maybe hire somebody to help you talk and navigate and salvage this relationship. Or you need to find a way to separate and go your own ways, because you've recognized that this is so stinking toxic at this point that at the very least you need space, like immediately. Yeah. And that's the sad thing that I feel like doesn't happen. And that's where we get these really aggressive and terrible breakups, particularly in our marriage culture.
Indeed. Now, there was another article that you came across from BuzzFeed that we both were able to dive into to come up with an impromptu Nerdy 5 here.
Yeah. So we haven't done a Nerdy 5 in a minute, and Tim and I kind of liked doing these. So I found an opportunity to do kind of a fun one. This is our least favorite dating rules, in quotes. I would also just say our least favorite dating behaviors, if I can talk today. So gonna go back and forth. I know there's at least one that we matched up on. So Tim, why don't you take us away with your number 1, your least favorite dating rules or behaviors?
All right. My first least favorite dating rule is telling people to try harder, and eventually they'll make the person fall in love with them. According to the article, this causes all kinds of issues, especially if the feelings aren't reciprocated, which, duh,
right.
Like the relationships that have worked, even, short-term stuff like that, but the relationships that have worked for me have been ones to where they just work. You know, I mean, granted, there's work involved in maintaining that long term, but you know, at the start, things just work. If you find that there is a disconnect, you need to really examine that, because that may be your brain telling you, hey, maybe this ain't going to work. Maybe this isn't ideal.
Right. And I think there's a difference between the whole, like what this is talking about, which is try harder, and working on your relationship together, right?
Indeed.
This one is really kind of, it almost drips with the control issues, right? Because eventually they'll, quote, make the person fall in love with them. Well, you're trying to control your partner or your potential partner. And, you know, we kind of catch whiffs of when people try to control us, and it's extremely off-putting. I think that's why sometimes when people have conversations about opposing positions, if somebody is going into that conversation with the full intention of, I'm going to change your mind, there is something that person will pick up about that and kind of get in that defensive, like pick up all those defensive mechanisms against that. And I don't blame them. Like, that's a very natural reaction to somebody trying to control you, your feelings, your thoughts, your actions, is to defend your feelings, your thoughts, your actions. So it's kind of putting yourself like where you're trying to control that person. So super obvious why that's a toxic dating behavior.
Yeah, and it's not healthy. You're trying to create something that's not there, and then ultimately what you end up doing, and I've fallen victim to this myself, you end up trying to capture an idea of a person and not capture their heart and have them for real, you know. And if it's to the point to where you're more in love with an idea of a person and not the person themselves, you got to step back.
Right. It kind of, I think I've mentioned this book before on here that's kind of on my tick list of stuff to read one day, but there's one called Controlling People that talks about that concept, where, yeah, they're especially if they don't like act in the way you expect them to, which is to love you, that doing things to someone to try to make a certain result is trying to control them. Like, that is literally the definition of it. So the Reverend's number one least favorite dating rule or behavior, the idea that someone has to go out with a man because he's nice. I remember this kind of really being taught more on the vagina, on the woman end, the girl end of the conversations. Like, as a child, I kind of remember this odd pressure that I felt like in general, and I'm totally open to being corrected on this one, but I did feel like, especially this goes back to when I was a kid in Texas, so take it with a grain of that there was more of a conversation and a pressure towards female-bodied women people to the personality should be good enough for you, even though that's not really the expectation on the other side, right? We were still supposed to diet and be fit. In Texas, there was a lot of the you should be the Dallas Cowboys cheerleader type mentality if you really want to be dateable. That's a big thing there. So I really didn't like that pressure, because that did, like, when I think back of early dating times, like, I felt obligated to go on dates with people who were nice, and I never meant to lead them on. I thought I was doing a very nice thing, but it's not a nice thing. It is leading someone on if you're not interested in them. But there's that weird guilt that you're really scared to hurt the nice guy because you don't want to make that nice guy the bad guy for the next woman that he tries to date. So there's just an interesting pressure that I remember, a narrative on that, if you will, like since childhood.
To me, it reminds me of Back to the Future, with Marty's mother, Lorraine. At the beginning of the movie, you shouldn't kiss with a boy, sitting in a car with a boy. Back in my day, we did this, and yet when Marty goes back in time, finds out his mother did everything she said not to do. And I think too, a lot of this. Because I remember, when my daughter was younger, you should go. I told her you should be with a nice guy, and when I meant that, I meant, someone that wouldn't treat her bad, hit her or anything like that. But, hearing that, me saying nice guy to her, and then society's, telling her as a woman what a nice guy is too, maybe I could have been a little more clear on my end,
Yeah, but I totally see where that encouraging to date someone just because they're nice, with that weird narrative that if you don't, you're going to make that nice guy a mean guy, like, is just something that I just really recall, even though nobody ever spelled it out that way, But at the same time, you can kind of see where that narrative is. Like even some of the men that do end up being kind of the womanizer type, like there are many that blame it on, being nice doesn't get you anywhere. Being nice gets you shit on, and that's a very sad mentality to have. But that's kind of the weird two ends, I guess, of that one. But what is your number 2?
Number 2. My number
it's a
2
poop
here.
joke.
Yeah. Duty. It's playing hard to get. It's a super toxic dating strategy for everybody involved. The person who's using the tactic is messing with the other person's head. And like me, I'm not subtle in any way, shape, or form in the art of romance. I'm not going to play hard to get, because if I'm trying to play hard to get, I'm as easy to read as a cue card. But, when I've tried to date women that have played hard to get, though, like I don't like that, and like now, if that happened to me now and a woman played hard to get, I just wouldn't talk to her again, because it's like there is levels that you got to earn, I guess, in a relationship the more you get to know somebody. But I shouldn't have to, think of song and dance routine in order to take someone to see a movie,
Right. Like the whole. And I guess like some of these rules, I felt like some of the rules in this article were a little bit redundant and could have been looped together. But there was another one mentioned of you got to wait X number of days, or, and that's all part of that pretending to be disinterested, right?
Now,
the playing hard to get.
Now, playing hard to get and an established relationship a lot of times can have different connotations, and that can be fun. But this is not what we're talking about here, especially if you don't know the person. Why put up barriers? Why not just say, if you actually do like the person, say, let's do something instead of you do this, and this, and then maybe I'll grant you the gift of my presence.
Right.
All right. What is your number 2?
Number 2, another popular one I remember, pretending to be interested in something you're not in order to get a date. The very popular one in Texas specifically, because that's where a lot of my formative years and a lot of that programming tried to come from for dating on what to do, was I better at least pretend to be into football. Because I should expect that my man is going to want to watch sports, either football or NASCAR or something like that. And I better be on board with going to all of those things and being into their interests, because being into their interests means, that we can be together for some reason, even though like, especially I would say like in polyamory, it's been something that I've heard more talked about, is you don't have to be somebody's everything. And now that attitude can exist in monogamy as well, because I know you bring up polyamory sometimes to monogamous-minded folks, and they just immediately like reject everything. Like they don't want to hear any of it. But there's a lot of really healthy dating stuff in there. Like not needing to be somebody's everything. Like your partner can have friends to go to games with. Like it does not have to be you. Maybe that's when you do the thing that you like to do that they're not into, or if you're a crafter and you get to be at home while they're at games or whatever. Like you can reframe uncommon interests as being that healthy, independent time, which is really good. And I think there's more and more research showing that having that independence in your relationship is an incredibly healthy thing. So it's interesting that this is still something that is so relevant that it comes up on a BuzzFeed article today. This idea that you need to pretend to be into something. And I'm trying to think, there was totally like a dating site that it's not a dating site. There was a movie, and I'm trying to think of the name of it, and I'm sure it'll come to me the minute we end the call, where her friend is trying to help her. Oh, Must Love Dogs. That was it. Must Love Dogs. There's a scene where the friend is like, it's an ad. And she makes like her friend all of these different profiles. And one, she's really into rodeo and like crap like that. And the other one, she's really into like totally different things like fine dining. And so, yeah, like that's been that prevalent. This whole idea that you should pretend to be somebody to advertise yourself instead of actually advertising what you really are, right? Because there's a different mentality around that. Put out there what you are so you can attract people who are into you. Not put out a fake version of yourself so that you can get more hits.
And also, too, like you mentioned, keep in mind that, this is not a case of looking for that one person who shares each and every interest that you do have, because you're not going to find that person. Even if they do like the same types of movies, they may like different movies for different reasons, and it's you do have to have some shared interest in a long-term, nesting partner type of relationship. In order to make that work, you do. But that doesn't mean it has to be everything. And to your point, yeah, like it would be great, like I love professional wrestling. Do I expect a partner to be into it? Would it be great? Of course, I would love that. But I'm not going to bring somebody to a professional wrestling show that doesn't want to be there, because I know it is an acquired taste.
Yeah, like you need to kind of know your prices of admission, right? And I think that may have been something I took from Savage Lovecast. Because I did like some of Dan Savage's stuff. When I was going through the divorce with my first husband, I really listened to a lot of dating stuff. And that's where it's like I listened to Polyamory Weekly, Multi-Amory, and Savage Lovecast for the most part. Is kind of my, all right, I'm actually in the dating world. What do I need to know? And I loved that concept of a price of admission. So like, Tim, if you're constantly on the road and traveling because you're following wrestling, I could see that being a more realistic price of admission. Or if it's just really important to you because you have social anxiety and you're going to want your partner to be with you at places, that is a fair price of admission to like really want that. But you really need to pick those carefully, because it goes kind of back into that. You can't have a list of 130 some odd things. You're not going to find that. So it's just kind of making realistic. Yeah.
It has to be the important ones.
Yeah. Realistic expectations. It's important to set them for yourself as well as any potential partners that you may have.
Now, we both shared a number 3.
Yes. Waiting for men to make the first move. Super outdated, and the woman only gets to date guys who actually approach her, which will limit her possibilities.
I have only had one woman ask me out for a date, and that was back in high school. And I ended up not going with her because she pushed a little too hard for the date. But that's a different story. But it would be nice if, a woman came up and says, "You're cute, let's go out." Because like at that point I'd be like, okay, but still, yeah, that happens. It's like the times to where like I would have gay guys like hit on me. Like if they hit on me, like I'm not going to go out with them, but it's just like, oh my God, someone thinks I'm cute.
Yeah, and I kind of remember. I guess I was ahead of my time. But yeah, I used to try to ask boys out. And then what's funny is that got turned into making fun of me as being desperate. And I never understood that. I remember being very confused. Like, wait a second, I'm not allowed to just say that I would date you if you were into that? Like, why is that on the no list? So that was one of those things I remember really early, like even in 5th grade. I still remember my first check yes or no letter, because when I was a kid, that song was popular and I did it, and I got made fun of because, well, Tracy, that was a man writing a note to a girl. You don't do that. Like that's not your role. And then what I find interesting about this whole concept of still waiting on men to make the first move is it kind of puts them in an oddly predatory role in dating. Like if it's all up to the man to make the first move, I kind of find it hard to not take that any other way. If they are the pursuer and you are meant to be pursued. And it just seems like that's been such an unhealthy thing. And we've even pointed out that that's unhealthy, especially because it puts men to more that narrative that they are supposed to be persistent. They are supposed to pursue, even necessarily if a woman doesn't want them to. And especially when you pair that with another really damaging behavior that we do of the playing hard to get. A man now in this situation, when you combine those two rules, doesn't know if they're doing the right thing or not. So wait, is she playing hard to get or is she saying no? So do you keep pursuing or not? Because if you're in that role, you kind of assume that it's your job to keep pursuing.
But that's the thing, though. I mean, when you get someone with so much anxiety like myself, though, if I get faced with that situation, it's like, well, nice knowing you. Like that's the importance of communication. That's why I think it would be great if we did have a society that didn't kind of belittle women into asking guys out, because to what you mentioned, I mean, would a boy of a comparable age who asked a girl out be given the ridicule that you were given? Of course not.
Oh, no, but this goes back to, I was born in 85 and this was like in middle school. So that I was, like I said, really ahead of my time, because that wasn't something you did as a girl.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you didn't ask out boys. You waited for them to ask you out. And so I was
or you wait for the Sadie Hawkins dance,
Or you wait for the Sadie Hawkins. Nope, you're right. Sadie Hawkins dance. But what's funny is we didn't have those. We did not have Sadie Hawkins dances where I was from. We did have like I forget what they called it, but it was very Sadie Hawkins themed when I went to the Christian university.
But because
that's the one time you were allowed to pursue your fellas as a female in that Christian community, was the whole Sadie Hawkins themed thing. But other than that, yeah, there's just this whole thing where you are not allowed. But that even goes into that playing hard to get weird thing, or just, you have to hide that you're interested for some reason.
Indeed. Well, let me go on with my number 4 here for my least favorite dating role, and that's men treating women like achievements instead of people, and basically the notch on the bedpost type of deal, putting up statistics as to how many, women are not achievements in a video game. They are living, breathing human beings with emotions just like you. That doesn't mean you can't have sex with a lot of them, but again, you can do that while being respectful of them as human beings.
Yes, and a lot of that requires honesty, right? Like, you just need to be willing to be honest about it. That's it. That's the only thing you got to do. And be okay when they don't want it back. Like, that's the second part.
Yeah, because again, guys, believe it or not, women are open to a lot. You just got to be cool.
Oh, yeah. Especially now, there's been... I don't like calling it the slut movement, because I think that kind of just really, yeah. But I've heard it referred to as the slut movement. But yeah, I fully support that women are now more comfortable when they do just want casual sexual relationships, right? Because it wasn't that long ago that was viewed as a really disgusting thing. That if a woman didn't want to couple, like a nest, that they just wanted to have promiscuous sex, that was a really like bad thing. It meant that they were like a bad person in a weird way. I just kind of remember that narrative. But that's more now. Like, more women are feeling more okay with being honest about that. And I think that's the cool thing to capitalize on. If you are a person who likes to have sex with women and just wants to have casual sex, you're more likely to get that honesty now. Because we're not that far away from women also lying that that's what they wanted, because they're really hoping they can get that man to fall in love with her. Like, magic vagina, like that they're just going to start having sex with you, and that means that they will definitely fall in love with you, because that's how it works for you. But that goes back to, we often misinterpret other people's actions and abilities because we're basing it off of our experience, right? Just because if you're not demisexual, but if you're more likely to develop those tight romantic bonds because you are being sexual with somebody, which I think is a little bit related to demisexualism, that doesn't mean that that's going to be everybody's experience of sex. They're not going to maybe fall in love with you because you're opening up to them literally, right? So yeah, like kind of getting rid of that narrative would be super awesome.
It would be awesome, but I think too that does go into the whole how you establish the relationship to begin with, which again for online dating is kind of missing a step along the way,
Yeah, it goes back to that we're accidentally objectifying people and not really caring what their wants, needs, and emotionals, like feelings, are in the situation. Meanwhile, it does seem like a little bit of applied honesty would make a really kind of happy world where you're not feeling like you need to ditch and ghost and, oh my God, I'm changing my number again because bitches, right? Like, sorry, I've heard somebody say that before, like they changed their number because of that. And then now you got stuff like text now that makes that even easier than ever, which is sad. But anywho, My number 4, another thing that I super remember, setting everything by a timeline and due date. For example, after 2 months, you should be able to label it as a relationship. After 6 months, I love yous should have already happened. And after 1 year, cohabitate. Those sorts of things. I do kind of remember that. Like, I even remember it being kind of oddly restrictive because I felt like I wasn't allowed to share my feelings where they were at. Like, my experience is that when you find somebody that you love and you love each other, I love you comes up well before that 6-month mark.
Oh yeah.
Right? Like that is almost established really quickly if there's
Like within
love
the
in a
first
relationship.
month, if that, yeah.
Yeah. So this whole idea of timelines and how prevalent they still are is something that I would love to see more people question. Like, and again, like maybe don't take it personally if they don't say I love you back. We talked about that some with some of the big mouth stuff and some of the other things that we've watched with the TNT review. Like, it doesn't need to be taken that personally when they don't say I love you back. They're just not there yet. Like, you could still work on that relationship and love can grow. That doesn't mean anything bad that you're comfortable with saying that first where they're not. Besides, you might honestly be waiting on them to work out unresolved stuff around talking about emotions with their family, which is a deeper issue. And I do think that that warrants some patience, right? Like, I don't know. I've never understood why that was considered so hurtful. Yeah, I mean, I guess there's some really bad ways to respond to I love you, and it's kind of a cliche, and it comes up in movies about dating time and time again, like, oh, I love you, and they go, that's neat. And then that's what the movie's about. You know what I mean? But I was like, but was it really that bad? Like, they could have just lied and said it back, and then they've got this weird resentment building because they're like, you put me in this position to say something. But we can totally be open to accepting that people develop levels of feelings at different times. And it's okay if you're not 100% on the same timeline. It doesn't mean that relationship is doomed as long as you can have those honest conversations and being open to that. And it goes back to not taking it personally on little levels of incompatibility.
Yeah, I mean, in relationships, you do have, I mean, more than anything, I think it's like a societal expectation of what is supposed to happen in a relationship. And people are different. People, there are some people that will meet and then within 6 months, they're already married and have a baby on the way, and then you have some people that take some time. I mean, relationships work in different ways and you will know when it's right. I think the important thing to keep in mind is stuff like NRE, of course, because you don't want to make decisions in the midst of NRE to find out, whoops, we don't have nothing in common,
Oh, yeah. And even then, like, that just takes mature information or mature conversation, because if you do end up like, you ended up moving in with each other. I know that Mr. Reverend and I moved in with each other really quickly because that worked for us. I was in a situation where I was roommates with my ex-husband, and he was in a situation where he was kind of staying in like kind of just this little tiny, like, renting a room from a place, and he wanted into a bigger space. I wanted into a bigger space. So we had that talk, and that's what I love so much about my partnership with him, is that we've always been able to kind of have that level of conversation where we can say, hey, if this doesn't work out, can we just like try to be as amicable as possible? Like, it's a 2-bedroom. We could totally, one of us can move into the second room. We can feel out like if we can make it through the end of the lease and just get through it, right? Like, can we agree going into this that we're not terrible people so bad that if this doesn't work out on a romantic level? And people say that I am like totally unromantic because I've still had those conversations with him, like regarding if we ever decided to get divorced. And if that happened, if we had a baby, what would that look like? Like if we shared a child, what would that look like? And I think those are important conversations to have.
They are definitely important conversations to have, and conversations that people are not having. I've been guilty of not having them myself in relationships. And it's like by the time things get to the point where it's untenable, it's far worse than what it would have been if you both had just sat down and talked it out, especially in terms of a moving in situation, because moving in and living with somebody is a completely different experience than dating them while you live in 2 separate residences, because you have that distance. When you live together, that's gone.
Totally. And actually, you know what? Let's flip our number 5 sharing, because we've accidentally gone into mine, and then we'll wrap up with your number 5. Right. My number 5, and something that I get judged for still when I talk about this. Not talking about important issues on the first date. One of the examples they gave is if you want to have kids, and again, a lot of this is written under the monogamy scope, right? Like this was not, and none of this that we pulled up was polyamory stuff. So this is all like monogamy dating. Not talking about stuff like if you want to live together, if you want to get married, if you want to have kids. I have been told so often that I am too intense to date. And when I unpack what they're talking about, it's because I don't have time for small talk. I mean, I think that's almost clear about how we have these conversations as our podcast, that we don't just talk about, oh, that weather. I mean, we start with that, but we dive in and we have sometimes difficult conversations with each other on this show. And I think that should be something that you said at the beginning, especially if you do want somebody that you live with. Right? Like you need to be able to have difficult conversations living with somebody you're sharing space. And that even goes with roommates too, right? Like if there's an expectation on chores, if there's an expectation on like how to split the water bill because somebody wants to take 3 showers in a day and maybe you're just not that person, you do dry brushing or whatever and shower just once a day or every other. Because if you do dry brushing, it does get a lot of stuff off of you. If you're not like working out and busting a huge sweat, I know some people who don't necessarily shower every day. And I bring that up because that has been a fight amongst roommates that I have overheard. Not any of my roommates, but 2 people who were roommates fighting about the water bill because they felt one person used it way more than the other. But you basically need to have like good communication skills. But yeah, it's something that I always felt people judged me for. And I guess I'm too intense. I'm too much because I expected to be able to be honest and say, here's what I need. And like sometimes you can have that honesty and it's not taken seriously. Like there was a guy that I had dated, and this was just so you know, I'm not talking about you. This was after you. This was before the Mr. Reverend, and actually also collided with the time that I was dating the Mr. Reverend. But there is this guy that I just really didn't see it working in a living together situation. And I knew he wanted that. But I was very clear that that probably wasn't going to come from me. I just didn't get that sense of that compatibility between us, but I really enjoyed him as a person. I enjoyed our dates. I enjoyed our conversation. He was funny. And then when I did like kind of like, he really started to sink in that that wasn't going to be a me moving in with him and that kind of relationship. He kind of started justifying treating me not so great. And that turned into a lot of me crying and having to unpack these fights that I didn't understand. And now I'm not saying that he was a bad person for that. I actually completely understand kind of where that may have not been the best dating relationship for me to choose to be in. Like, I think there were earlier signs that if I had been honest with myself, I maybe should have backed that relationship a little bit down, like in a very kind way. I don't know how he would have handled that conversation because, you know, the fact is the fact, it wound up blowing up. And, you know, I mean, what's great is even he and I have an okay friendship. Like, we're still Facebook friends every now and then. We check in on each other. Like, it was able to come away from being that. But yeah, not talking on the first date and not taking people seriously when they tell you those things on the first date is kind of almost related to this. But I didn't see that one. Like, when somebody does tell you what they want in the beginning, it's not your job to convince them of something different.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, little things like, I don't want kids, and then somebody else, oh, come on, eat this cute, here's a baby, don't you want your... No, I told you I don't want them, you know, and you got to be able to respect that and be able to have the courage to walk away from it if that is what you want yourself.
Yes. Is that a price of admission for you? Do you know for a fact that you want or do not want children? That is absolutely relevant to bring up early, because like there's no sense in getting super emotionally attached. Then you start making plans with this human. And then you realize that those plans aren't going to look like what you expected on both sides. Like if person A expected, you know, cool coupleship, never having kids, and if person B expects cool coupleship, having kids, well, that's obviously going to cause some resentment at some point. So doesn't it make sense to kind of have those conversations early and be real about it instead of what I feel, especially it goes back to what female-bodied, what vaginaed people are kind of taught, or at least were taught in my neck of the woods, down where I come from, is that, well, he just doesn't know that he wants that with you yet. Men have to be kind of made comfortable before they want kids. And I'm like, that's really just not the case.
No.
One of the early conversations I had with the Mr. Reverend at the time was, I'm not really sure I ever want to have kids. And he was saying, like, well, he's fine. He loves being a dad. If we ever decided to, he's fine with it, but he's okay that he's got his kids. I love being a stepmom. Like, that was definitely a conversation that was super healthy and super awesome from the beginning. And then what's great is from there, your only job is to realize that sometimes people's desires change. And not necessarily, it's not that they lied to you. It's that, maybe the person who didn't want to have kids got really comfortable with you and now suddenly is fine with that. So that's a healthy way that conversation can pivot down the road. Or if they really go into I want to raise kids, but I just really don't physically want to have a baby, can we adopt? Like, there's ways that you can maybe be open to conversation around some of those big topics. And even down to moving in together. Maybe that person thought they wanted to be like kind of, nope, I'll date you. We could be forever couple. Who was it? Goldie Hawn and
Kurt Russell.
Kurt Russell. Like, they never lived together. And that worked for them. I don't know if they ever did at some point, but I know for most of their relationship, they did not. They had kids together, but that worked for them. But I think at some point, if somebody changed their mind and decided they wanted to live together, that doesn't mean that they lied about it from the beginning. And I think that's the odd thing that happens in dating sometimes too. That's oddly related to this point.
Yeah, you do got to accept the fact that, with time, people do end up changing. Their needs end up changing. Yeah. So you got to be able to accept that. But two, again, the important thing is to talk about the important stuff. I've been guilty of not talking it out, and I've dealt with the consequences after the fact. And, at my age, I don't know if I want to do that much anymore myself,
Exhausting cycle, I think, is what I would call that. It's a very exhausting cycle.
It is. But let me go on with my number 5 here. And being a cheap Dutchman, I had to put this on my list here. And that's the idea that a man should pay for the date. People pass it off as some gentleman type thing, but really, it's designed to make the other person, they feel they owe the man something, i.e., sex, because he bought them dinner, a movie ticket, etc. I think of that Chris Rock bit where he talked about where guys are really only really offering dick to women, like, hey, how's it going? Do you want some dick? Hey, how about I help you with this? Do you want some dick? But to me, though, by default, I wish, for all of my dates that it would be Dutch, unless there's a clear expectation at the start that this is something special and I'm going to pay for the entire thing. Especially at the start, there should be no expectation of one person paying for everything, because if it's a first date, you're not in a committed relationship yet. Why should one person have to pay for everything if you're just meeting to see if, you're compatible in any way, shape, or form,
Oh, exactly. And plus, like, normalizing Dutch dating, right? Like Dutch payment. And that's, again, early in it, right? Like, if you're planning a special dinner and it's really bougie and expensive, maybe you should be the one that intends on paying for that, right? But if you're doing some of these first dating activities, like, and I'm not like, okay, so if you're doing something cute, like taking them to an event, like the circus or something, I could see just buying their ticket. Yeah. But like some of the most common early dating things are going out for a meal, or going out and meeting for coffee, having a beer. Like, go ahead and normalize Dutch dating, because I think that would also nip a toxic dating culture thing that actually I didn't see getting brought up, but it is actually people who don't actually want to date and just want the free meal, the free food, the free drinks, which I think is something that is a really toxic attitude that has been encouraged on the female bodied end of the dating spectrum. Yeah. Is just this idea that because you have the vajayjay, that you should be doted upon. And there are a demographic of women who take advantage of that. I am not saying all, but it exists, and we need to own that exists. And to protect the nice guys out there, I think we kind of owe it upon ourselves to kind of normalize Dutch dating, because that's going to make less nice guy victims who are genuinely sweet guys and just want to do the right thing and are just happy to have like that social interaction with somebody and the potential for a date. Right.
And think about scenarios too, to where maybe the woman makes more than the guy, significant amount more than the guy. If the guy is doing just a regular 9-to-5 job with a high school diploma or something like that, paying for a lobster and caviar dinner, is not something you'd be able to do every week necessarily.
Yes. When the Mr. Reverend and I went on our first date, no joke, he met me at the train station. Because he didn't have a vehicle at the time. Here's a cute thing. The first words he ever said to me was he picked up this blue, if anybody knows what a buff is, and I think we're more familiar with buffs now because of the pandemic, and a lot of people got buffs to kind of, that little almost, neck looking wrap that they could slip up over their nose. That was not at all a face mask, by the way, but he always carries one. So he had this blue buff and he brought it out and he goes, "Excuse me, miss, but does this rag smell like chloroform?" Very, very, very classy. No, it had to do with a joke from us chatting over Tinder, but we went to a Sherry's diner. I got a salad. He wasn't hungry. I later found out he just didn't really have that much money and he wasn't hungry. So he just got a coffee. Mm-hmm. I paid for his coffee because it was just a coffee.
You hussy. No.
I know. But then we kind of had this little joke about me being a sugar mama because at the time I was working in a very well-paying tech job. So I could afford to take us to places like Luklao, which is like a very popular bougie tapas bar in downtown Portland. I could take us out to sushi. I could take us to, we went to Portland City Grill once, and that's probably one of the more upscale. I paid for all of that because those were things that I wanted to do. And I really respected that he let me. Like, I've been in that situation where a person has said, "I don't want to do this date because I don't feel comfortable with you paying." And meanwhile, to me, I don't really give a rip about money. I wanted to go spend time with this person. There's all of this fun dining and fun stuff to do in downtown Portland. And I'm like, you know what? This person's really fun to spend time with. I can pay for it. Like, I don't care. And I think that was this goes into, I do kind of feel the Mr. Reverend is an anomaly because I've not really met many men who were comfortable with that. So it was a really cool thing for me to experience. And now I'm not in that position, right? Like, I work a part-time job, so it's almost a little bit like the role reversal. So now he picks stuff and gets to pay for those, but we're also like married now. So that kind of becomes joint finances. But yeah, like, I found that very refreshing. That's the only time I was really able to be in that position was when I was working in that job. And let me tell you, to those that consider yourself the ladies out there, oh my God, yeah, that was super freeing. It was nice for me to choose things that I wanted to do and just see if he wanted to come along. And guess what? There were times that I wanted to do stuff that he didn't want to come along. And that's okay. I didn't get shamed for wanting to do something he didn't want to do. And I also still did that thing. Very empowering to take that upon yourself, honestly.
Indeed. And I think ultimately at the end here, ultimately just be honest, communicate with people and just tell them what you want. The earlier you can tell them what you want out of the relationship, the better. And I think it's also important too that, if you do have bumps in the road in a relationship, talk them out.
Exactly.
Don't be afraid to communicate with a person that, you care about, especially if you live with them, because if you don't talk this stuff out, poison stuff happens, and that's not good. Trust me on that, folks.
You know what? I didn't plan on giving a reading recommendation when we first came on to do this episode. And I'm going to preface this of you can take dating advice from other people, like in polyamory, even if you're a monogamous person. And I think one of my favorite books that I've read that I felt like talked really well about communication is from another podcaster. It's actually from that Polyamory Weekly that I mentioned. So maybe we should totally tag Cunning Minx in this. I don't know if her podcast is still going. I've kind of moved on from, I was studying relationships. So it's not that they were bad podcasts. I was ready to move on from listening to them. But this book, and I'm actually holding it for Tim right now, is 8 Things I wish I'd known about polyamory before I tried it and fracked it up. And really, I almost wish this book had been named something like anything different, like about like relationship communication and honesty, because I really feel like she hit a lot of very good points on the head. It's a short book. It's not a long book. It's an easy read. She, I think, is probably one of the more charming people that I got to listen to, because, you know, Dan Savage is a little bit rough around the edges sometimes, but Cunning Minx, I always felt was, I just wanted to hug her like almost every time. Like I was like, I would hang out with you and have coffee with you. Like you seem like such a nice human to speak to. But yeah, like, because really with polyamory, like you have to have on point communication skills. And that's what I took away from studying that. Am I technically a practicing polyamorous person anymore? I mean, not really, right? Like I'm very much in a monogamous style relationship. And I'm not even sure that will always be the case. But right now, my reality is this is it and this is working. And a lot of the reason it's working is because of the communication skills I picked up in essentially being curious about other dating preferences, being curious about polyamory, and being willing to like learn what I could from that. So again, just to emphasize, you don't have to be interested in pursuing a polyamorous relationship to take really good communication advice that I think is definitely relationship saving material and will help build you to be a good person to have a relationship with because you've been working on those skills in the background.
Yes, I mean, because in polyamory, the fact that you are dealing, you know, in some cases with, you know, multiple people here, you do have to have good communication skills. If you don't have them, it will not go fun.
No, it don't go too good when ne comunicato. You kind of need to learn how to talk. And I think if you've ever been in a relationship that got to that aggressively, like, you know, that aggressive or violent head, when you really are honest with yourself about it, it was probably communication not happening, because I think that's where you get so mad, is that you feel like this kind of resentment because you feel like you constantly have to be the one that just deals with not communicating. And I think that happens on both sides. That's not just like one person is guilty and one person is not. I think in a weird way, when that happens, both people are guilty. And it's just hard to accept that you're guilty of wrong. Because we have a very honest urge for self-preservation in our minds. Mm-hmm. But you should understand that and be willing to work past that if you want to have a good, healthy relationship.
Indeed, indeed. So any last words about dating?
No, just get out there and be good to people, man. Like, I don't know, maybe if you've got a whole, you know, end relationships, don't start them, stay toxic mentality, like maybe don't be in the dating pool. If you legit just want casual sex and casual connection and have no intention of moving in with somebody, just be honest about it, because there are people who are cool with that and will want that back, right? And just don't go into relationships trying to change people. Like any of them, your friendships either. Like so much of relationship and dating stuff, I think, can even be applied to other relationships. It's ridiculous to me that we don't. But you don't need to lie to kick it. Like you should be comfortable being honest with your friendships, your partnerships, any of your relationships. Honesty is key. I know that is a cliche saying, but it really is key to healthy relationships.
Indeed, indeed. And I think most importantly, too, for men, maybe it's time to get off the dating apps. You know, I mean, it's if we're talking a 2-to-1 guys to women ratio here, maybe it's time to, you know, get out of the house, rub your eyes so you can get used to the sunlight outside, and find something to do to find women in other ways. Because, you know, when it comes to dating apps, women have a lot more choices to choose from, and, you know.
I think I have a little bit of a caveat there.
What's the caveat?
Why not both? Like, you can actually be that nice guy on Tinder or whatever. Just maybe don't put all of your eggs in that basket. Go out and meet people. Because maybe you could still be that little bit of that demographic that's not on there just to fuck around. Like, there's no saying that you can't do both, I guess, is what I'm saying.
Yeah. And to be clear, I'm not saying that despite the fact that I said it, if dating apps work for some people, that is great. That is good. But, just overall, again, like a 2-to-1 odds, the odds are not in your favor, guys. So find a way to meet women in other ways besides in your bathroom or during break at work.
Maybe don't swipe on the toilet. Totally been guilty of that, which made me laugh my ass off on more than one occasion. I was like, I think I swiped that dude while I was on the toilet at work. But I guess what I was saying was you can totally kind of reframe your relationship with those dating apps and just one of my favorite shows to watch is Alone. Okay. And this is going to sound really unrelated, but just hang on for a second. The most successful people on Alone don't hunt by one method. They're setting traps. They're finding ways to fish. And if they're really resourceful, they'll find a way to hunt. Now, and I know saying hunting and dating kind of sounds like predatory stuff, but I just mean like there's nothing wrong with casting a net and throwing a fishing line. You know what I mean? So, but maybe just have it where you've got that more healthy relationship with Tinder. Like, don't necessarily like, if they're using weird code, like let's go have tacos, which I'm still trying to figure out if that meant something, because every woman that I did come across was like, let's meet and have tacos. I'm like, why do I feel like this is a weird innuendo that I'm not getting? Like that there was code about getting tacos. And I think there was with Tinder, but it was just something like, it didn't ever work out when I tried to connect with girls on there anyway. It just, but yeah, you can totally reframe your relationship with this, still be on there, but just don't be as emotionally invested in it, because I could see where that would get really hurtful time and time again. And if you don't have the ability to reframe it, by all means, get rid of it. If it's something that legit hurts you every time you interact with it, find different methods.
And that is one thing I did forget to bring up. I mean, from what I've read in articles too, a lot of people that do use the dating apps, like myself, deal with anxiety issues. And you got to challenge yourself too. The fact that I've been utilizing dating apps for as long as I have as my sole source of meeting women for dates, probably not the best idea, because I relied on it too much, I guess, speaking only for me here, so if you do find yourself with some social anxiety, this may be a reason to challenge yourself to get out and not be so reliant upon the electronic teats.
Exactly. And plus, if you've kind of got that mentality that you're going out to make relationships, you're going to build a cool tribal network of friends along the way too. So then what happens is whenever you're focused on only dating for relationships, tale as old as time, you get into a relationship, you become friends with all their friends, that relationship doesn't work out, and then you're friendless because, they were friends with them first. And that was something that I totally kept repeating, where I would kind of date friend groups, and then I would end up losing all of those friends every time. And that just kind of sinks you down where you feel even more lonely. And that was a really horrible cycle that I did not realize I was doing. And it took me forever to break it. I don't think I broke that until I actually moved to Oregon, because that was the final straw, was the relationship that I moved away from. I mean, granted, I was already planning on going to Oregon, but I went earlier because I wound up filing a restraining order against this person. But even before that point, I was already feeling really lonely, because I had realized I lost all of my friends by breaking up with this. I'll just call it what it was. He was kind of an asshole. So it was warranted. But that made it harder for me to end that relationship that was not good for me, because I knew I was going to be losing all of my friends too. So in a weird way, kind of getting yourself out there and having an attitude of building relationships, like platonic as well as romantic, can kind of set you up to not feel as lonely. Because
what I've found is you got to reframe it. It's like if you're dating somebody and the dating is not working out, that can be sad, but try to think about the positives. What is working? What can continue to work? And too many people are focused on what they've potentially lost than what they have. And I think if more people can appreciate what they have, then maybe a breakup won't sting so much, as long as, the communication is there. Because again, if communication's not there, that's a problem to begin with,
Yes.
But anyway, I think that will wrap us up for another week here. We thank you all for listening. Every Saturday in this podcast space, we will have something to entertain your ear holes. Until we meet again, we bid you adieu.
Stay single, toxic people.
I'm going to swipe left on that one.
Subscribe to Friends Talking Nerdy on iTunes, the Google Play Music Store, as well as Spotify. Remember to support Friends Talking Nerdy on Patreon. Goodbye, darling.